Well, the Week 4 edition of the Minnesota Vikings podcast is underway. It is Border Battle Week here inside the TCO radio studio, and my name is Gabe Henderson, and our guest for tonight is a guy. When I asked Brian Flores before this podcast, I said, hey, B-Flow, how would you describe our guest today? He said, well, his nickname, the way I used to call him, is Playmaker. And Playmaker, a.k.a. Kamu Grugier-Hill, is our podcast guest today. And Kamu, just a pleasure to be joined with you today, one. Two, when I think of the word playmaker, no other play stands out more to me than the first play that you got in on Sunday against your former team, the Houston Texans. You get an interception, man.
Yeah,
Welcome to the show.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it was such a electric feeling to be in that stadium. And, I mean, honestly, those are one of those that I looked up after and just thank God because that landed in my lap. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I did anything crazy to get that one, but to be in there and share that feeling with the rest of the team and the guys and make it a game-changing play was awesome.
What goes through your head during a play like that? Because you just said that landed in your lap. Usually linebacker interceptions or interception, like you gotta do some work for
usually,
it. But tip ball comes right to you.
Right. So I've had a couple interceptions where I've had to like truly work for them. And those are obviously the best ones. I mean, every interception's awesome, I think. But that one is just, those tip balls are really just reaction, especially first game. Things are a little cloudy, everyone's really hype and you're running your play. Things are happening quick, and the ball is it's like a flash of the ball. We always talk about catching the flash of the ball, right? And so I'm breaking to the guy, and out of the corner of my eye, I just see that flash of the ball, and it just right there, I had to get it.
Someone who doesn't know the game of football, the first thing they'll ask is like, what did you eat that morning?
Right.
For you to get an interception on your first play against your former team.
Right.
Your emotions going into that game, right? Like we talked this offseason. We've done some interviews with you, Blake Cashman, and Jonathan Bernard, who all played for the Texans last year. And all three of you guys had last week's game circled on the calendar.
Right.
So what were your emotions going into that game?
I think, I honestly think that that gets overplayed a little more than usual. Okay. I think, being in it a while, every game's important. I mean, it's not even like the coaching staff when I was there was still there. Yeah. Maybe different for Cash and JG, but there's a little chip on your shoulder. It's an organization that either let you go or let you walk away, right? They, in their mind, they're basically saying, we don't need you. We're going to go other ways. And sometimes that's just the business, but sometimes you can take that personal, and it's like, so when you play a team that has done that before and you go out and make plays, it's kind of, I don't know, maybe showing, hey, I can still do this,
And that was great to see. Back to the main point, 7 teams, 9 years, last year Carolina Panthers, but you were teammates with JG and Blake Cashman, correct?
Right, yeah. I was with them for 2 years at the Texans.
Yeah, and just thinking about how, time just kind of, played itself out with all three of you guys, including Shaq Griffin, who was on that Texans team last year. All four of you guys having just solid games. Like when you're in the locker room post game and you get a chance to talk to those guys off the camera and you bring up some of those, those moments of like, man, like it's kind of what we worked up for. Like what was it like talking to those guys? I mean, JG, Jonathan Bernard, 3 sacks.
Right.
What was it like?
It was just awesome. I mean, JG is a guy, first of all, that he's going to get either a bundle of sacks or a bunch of sacks in some form or fashion. I mean, that guy's a dog. I don't even think it had to be the Texans, but going against the Texans, like I said, and having that chip on his shoulder, I knew that, for him to come out of a 3-sack game just kind of put an emphasis on everything we just talked about. And, Cash, same thing, Shaq. I think we all just left that game feeling like, this is just a great feeling.
It was a great feeling for our Minnesota Vikings fans as we're talking to Kamu Grugier-Hill here inside the TCO radio studio. And Kamu, we were walking down the hallway. Brian Flores, who's probably the most talked about coach in the NFL, stopped us. We were having some conversations and just thinking about you guys' history together. One, he was telling me that back in 2016, he went to Eastern Illinois to scout you coming out of college.
Yep.
Walk us through just that process, you guys' relationship, and where you guys are right now.
Yeah, so, like you said, he came. I had a couple scouts come, but he was actually one of the only coaches, like true position coaches that came. And I don't know if anyone knows where Eastern Illinois is. It's like 4 hours south of Chicago, middle of cornfields. There's nothing there. So for him to come was awesome. But we put me through a workout. We were in the classroom for a while, going over plays and stuff. And, as a kid, you don't know. You're just this is a position coach in the NFL. You're intimidated, all this kind of stuff. But if anyone that knows Brian Flores is he's not gonna just wear his emotions on his sleeve, right? So.
It's calculated.
It's calculated. So I'm in there kind of reading, like, does this guy like me? Does he not? But, we leave that. I felt good about, my workout and all this kind of stuff. And then when New England drafted me, it was obvious that it was him that came back to Bill Belichick and whoever made that decision and had a good report on me. So when we went there, he was always in my corner. He was my position coach at the time for the year. He fought for me. I even talked to him. So I ended up getting waived, and they tried to bring me back on practice squad. I ended up getting picked up by Philly. So I left, and he kind of sought me out, and he was really upset about it. And I didn't really understand it, why. And then talking to him years down the road, I didn't really understand how much he actually fought for me. And just maybe other situations above his head made that decision. So just carrying on that relationship now, we've kept in contact over the years. I went to Miami for that 1 year with him, and then coming here now, we've always just had a good relationship. And I think he's a guy that I think he knows my play style, right? You go to different systems, and I've had success other areas. I've had maybe not so much success in other areas, but coming here, he knows. My favorite thing about him is he always plays to a player's strength, and he's going to put every player on the team, not just me, everyone, to their strength. He's not going to put you in a situation that you're not good at to do that. He's not going to ask that of a player.
And just thinking of how he's been able to orchestrate a defense to players' strengths, like how have you seen? Playing under him or seeing him operating in the meeting room on 3 separate occasions. Like, how have you seen his play calling evolve?
Yeah, I definitely have, because I've seen it. I've seen his mindset in New England and then even Miami. We're a totally different scheme than when I was in Miami. I thought, me and Gink, when we came here, we were like, oh, we already know the defense. And then we're like a weekend, we're like, oh, no, we don't. Like, this is completely different. And he's just not traditional, man. He doesn't believe in traditional stuff. Anyone that watches our film and acts like they knows what's going on, I guarantee you they don't. Because we're going into some meetings like, I don't know, is this going to work? And then sure enough, it absolutely does. He's just a mastermind with everything he does.
If people, if you've, watched Harrison Smith over his career, you've seen kind of how he's been able to impact the game with the rule changes. Right. And I've been on record saying, now I feel like we have 11 Harrison Smiths on this team. And I say that because about 2 years ago, we saw Harrison Smith lined up at defensive end, like he was about to blitz. And then he ran back cover 2.
Right.
And now, back then there were only probably 1 or 2 people doing that in the NFL. Now we got a full defense that's doing that. When you think about how you guys have been able to have that success, where does that disguising play into that?
I think that it starts with him right there. I think Harrison Smith, when he's not on the field, at least for me, this is just talking me personally, communication kind of slows down a little bit. I just feel like when he's on the field, things are clicking fast. We're all on the same page. Checks are being made. He's and honestly, this is the best thing about Flo sometimes. He puts it in the players' hands. Harry sometimes will take over and be like, hey, let's run this, let's run that. It's not even something that's up, but when he's on the field, he's kind of our leader, and we roll with it. So having his poise there, and he kind of gives us the emphasis to kind of do our own thing too, in the aspect of like feeling confident and feeling like we can take over our own roles in our own defense too. So it's awesome to see the defense come together.
I love that, man. Before we go to break, one question that kind of arises is thinking about that linebacker position. When you look at last week, when you look at the linebackers that dressed, there were only 3 linebackers,
right? Which
is crazy.
Crazy.
Like you don't see that. So what is the definition of a position group under Brian Flores?
I think it's a funny thing. He's kind of turning these defenses. Remember when like Tyrann Mathieu and all these guys were coming out and they were saying, "Oh, what position do you play?" And he said, "I'm athlete." That's kind of what his defense is turning into, right? Like when you talk about a guy like Andrew Van Ginkel, like what position does Gink play?
I can tell you.
You know what I mean? You can't. What does Josh Metellus play? You can't tell you. You know what I mean? So you have guys that are kind of just X's and O's on a paper that are doing different assignments and pulling this group of men together to perform and just play dominant defense.
Kamu, we were talking a little bit about your interception last week against the Texans, and when you turn on the film and you see how that play happened, there was one guy who got his hand up.
Right.
Big guy in front of the line on the defensive line. His name is Harrison Phillips. And,
right.
He's been playing outstanding this year. When you think about just his play, when you turn on the film, ultimately which led to your interception, but more plays. How would you describe how he's been playing and his impact on this defense?
Like I said, like you just said, I think he's been playing out of his mind. I think, what separates him, his knowledge of the game is on a whole nother level for a D lineman. I think that, not saying that D linemen aren't usually have high IQs or anything like that. It's just I think when you talk about a holistic view of a defense, D linemen aren't usually one of them to understand that, right? It's usually linebackers and safeties. But his understanding of the game, formation, run fits, checks, all that, he helps the linebackers out so much sometimes. Sometimes we have a lot of checks and he'll just immediately kind of take it in his own hands and get those guys going. And he just seems to be always in the right position.
With this unorthodox, defense, just full of athletes on the field, as you would call it, like how would you define how your mental process has evolved week to week this year?
I think the biggest thing is you can't go into it thinking like how me and Gink first did when you thought that, we have a base defense and this is what we run and, and X, Y, and Z. It's kind of things are always changing. There's always corrections. It doesn't matter if it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. It's something we can change a whole defense on the sideline. And I am not joking. We can change a whole defense on the sideline. And but you have to Flo always talks about having high IQ guys and being able to play at an elite level. And when you have a room full of guys that understand the game and know how to play this style of football, I mean he can make whatever he wants.
Who helped you understand the game of football? Like let's rewind back.
I always have this. It's just funny because I started playing my senior year of high school.
Wow.
And then I went to college for 4 years. And I left, and then I went to the pros. And in those 4 years in college, I was kind of in this scheme where I was kind of like one of just the better athletes on the field. So they were just like, hey, just make it easy for him. They junked up the front, and I would just run sideline to sideline making tackles. Go sack the quarterback. I'm like, all right, perfect. So I can truthfully say that I didn't learn football until like I was well into the league. You know what I mean?
Wow, okay.
And so once I started really understanding it, and I just fell in love with it. And I've fallen in love with just how to prepare and honestly the offensive scheme. Because before, as a younger player, you always only focus on your job as a defense. But I turned into more of what is the offense doing and why do they do certain things? Why do they click certain ways? Why do they do things out of certain formations? And that kind of has helped me a lot. And, even for my role now, I think that for a guy like IP who is insane and he can do things that I've never even seen other players do.
Give me an example of that because a lot of people say that. But give me an example. I mean,
it's you got to turn on the tape. Like there's some things that me and Cash or other Fred Warner, none of these guys are really. We can't bend the way he's doing, the way he escapes blocks, the way he spins out of tackles, and it is. He can do some crazy, freaky stuff, honestly. But for a guy like that who is so gifted and just trying to, I think, my role is trying to just help him understand the game, like I said, understand what offense they're trying to do, and just kind of be that older player, almost coach-like, you know, and just really kind of be the safety blanket whenever I need to.
How does that, affect that linebacker room with Blake Cashman, the guy you've played with? How I mean, you talked about IP, a.k.a. Ivan Pace Jr., being a young guy in the room, and now you got veteran linebackers in that room with him. Like, how have you guys been able to mold that into, okay, you got this athletic ability, but here's the mental side?
I think Cash is the best example for that because Cash is, he is playing on another level himself. He is. Came over all this adversity with injuries and all this kind of whatever it's been, and he is really dialed in. His knowledge of the game. Like I said, me and him bounce ideas off each other all the time. He's one of my closest friends, so we're always talking ball. And he's out there mostly with IP the most. So he's always trying to just talk into to IP's game a little bit and just and trying to help him just understand certain things. But like I said, dude, IP sometimes you don't even need it. He just go in there and the thing is, IP is a very intelligent linebacker for being his resume of being an undrafted guy and a second-year guy. His knowledge of the game already is insane. So
I think to that point, people forget that Ivan Pace's last year in college, he led the NCAA in tackles.
Right.
Like that's hard to do.
Right.
I'm no offense to Cincinnati, but that's hard to do, especially at a mid-major like that, and be able to affect the game his rookie year and then year two, still be able to do it at a high level. And I love the fact that you're talking about that, but still, when you think about this defense and how this linebacker room fits into that, how does that play into facing a Green Bay Packers team that's trying to figure out what their quarterback situation is going to look like on Sunday?
I think beyond the Packers, I think it gives offenses just a lot of doubt, right? It gives them a lot of different pictures. They don't know where guys are coming from, who's dropping, who's not, what coverage are they in. So I could imagine for a team that's, having some quarterback stuff, it might be something you got to worry about,
What advantages or disadvantages does that play on a defense when you turn on the film for 2 weeks and it's one quarterback, but there's another quarterback could play? Like, do you watch extra film? Like, what does that process look like?
Yeah, I think you got to go back and just look at what Willis has been doing. I think he's been winning games. You know what I mean?
That's true.
You're not going to be a quarterback and just be like, oh, this guy doesn't matter. They're winning games. He obviously matters. He's obviously making plays. So you got to watch both of them and just see. I don't know if that's between different play calls, between different styles of quarterbacks, right? If you have a running quarterback versus a pro passer, does your scheme change a little bit? That's really on the coaches, you know what I mean? But you kind of study for both and just get ready to adjust.
I love that. I mean, I'm just thinking about you made a good point earlier. First half versus second half, and in particular last week, two different defenses that the Vikings put out on film. I believe we blitz over 50% in the first half, and then less than 25, around 25% in the second half. Just for a quarterback, that drives you crazy.
Right.
But the fact that this defense can do that, how do you believe that's going to help this team week to week as the season continues to progress?
I think that, like I said before, it just keeps the offensive coaches and the offensive staff just guessing. I think the offense, every offense in the NFL wants to line up, they want to run their stuff, and they want to go. When you ever can slow them down from that and they start questioning, do we have this? What plays do we have? What is this taken away? Et cetera, that it just puts doubt in their mind, right? Yeah. And then you change it to something else. And it's like you always want to play in front of them and never let them catch up to what you're doing.
I love that. All right, Packer week this week. Couple more questions before we get you out of here. What do you know about this rivalry? What have your teammates talked about? It's your first time being a part of Packer Viking week.
I probably played the Packers in every year that I've been in the league, just randomly on different teams, right? And to me, I'm like, okay, we just play the Packers. But like when I talk to guys here, they're like, no, we play the Packers, bro. And I'm like, oh, it's like that. Okay, like maybe I gotta check myself then. It's fun, man. When you have these rivalries like this, and obviously every division game is important, right? That's all that matters is division. So seeing the energy that we're gonna have coming out, the coaching points that's been talked about. It's a big game, man. This is the one that matters, right now.
Is there anything? And I ask this question because a lot of people always talk about the historic stadiums in the NFL. You don't. We're starting to see more new stadiums start to be built. Right. US Bank Stadium is still the best stadium in the NFL, in my opinion.
Hands down.
Lambeau Field. There's a energy about that stadium. Do you feel anything different playing in a game or a stadium like Lambeau Field?
I think it's always cool to play there just because of the history, right? And their fans are crazy, and it's always a good time. But I mean, it's not like playing at US Bank. Tell you that much.
That's a fact.
You know what I mean? So
that's a fact.
It's cool.
It's cool. Well, look, what will be even cooler is if this Vikings team gets a win on Sunday in border battle and another border battle against the Green Bay Packers. And if you listen to Brian Flores, you know there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to make some plays, but none other than my guy to my right, Mr. Kamu Grugier-Hill, who made a ton of plays against the Houston Texans last week. And I'm looking forward to seeing this continued success, and such a pleasure being able to have you on the Minnesota Vikings podcast today.
Awesome. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir.